this online course, you will have access to video lessons created by a faculty team with a specific training background in the Russian academic method. These classes are a unique information set realized directly by the professors in the Russian language, edited with a professional English voiceover. Your professors for core subjects are
However, to do the detailing, we will need to wait for the paint to dry. Let's look at the nose and the texture inside the nostrils. Let's make it a bit more precise towards the model. While detailing, you must come back to the shadow and light in middle of tone. I suggest that you don't only repeat this exercise once, but numerous times to better gain some practice in this exercise. Keep redoing this task. It will give you an understanding and help you for future colour painting. Let's find the clothes silhouette and the direction of the clothes on each side in relation to the neck. The centre of the neck needs to have more information. And now we move back to the centre line of the face. Let's define the tip of the nose on the centre line and also the lips. Now we come back to the centre line of the face and check the lips and all of the proportions. We use a gentle line to construct the forehead. With very gentle lines, try to depict the construction of the forehead. And touch up the silhouette. Now let's put more shadows and details on the planes. This is the side part of the face which will be in the shadow as we already mentioned. Let's put a bit more shadow and find the characteristics of these points a bit better.
Next, the important part, what we need to show inside of the detailed eyes, is the age, where you will have the lower part of the eye. Which we need to emphasize here, one more important point. And it's when the low part of the eye will be started. Again, in the same way, in parallel for both the right and left eye, emphasizing the straight line. Putting points. I will continue doing constructive drawing, but we are no longer doing constructive drawing for the whole head. We are doing constructive drawing inside the small detail of the eye. The next proportion we need to find is where the low part of the eye will be finished. To do this, you need to look at your model and find the precise proportions of the model you are depicting. We see what this part will be inside of the shadow. The whole part from the right side will be in the shadow. And from the left side, it will be in the light. And understanding those forms, we are trying to depict contrast between shadow and light. At the same time, we are trying to show that the form is round, and we will emphasize all necessary places. Making a stronger contrast. Checking the position again, where the person is looking, the direction, let's try to emphasize the darker plane. For example, if I want to make a little bit more contrast inside of that eye, I need to once again check the position. And I'm trying to show depth even more in this eye. This is why I've gone back to that. Just to show that depth. Making light corrections here, which will bring our drawing closer still to the true character of the model. I could make the light even lighter here. I want to create an even stronger contrast in my eye, because this allows more of the model's character to shine through. This contrast will be applied to both sides, both eyes, emphasizing that highlight even more. You may wonder why we're doing this again. We've already done a lot of work on the eyes. Why are we coming back here? This is the part where you really shouldn't be afraid. And if you feel that you need to add more contrast, now is the time to do it. It may be that you have to remove some previously made details with the eraser. But this isn't a bad thing, because the eyes need to remain the number one detail. So we need all attention on this detail. Again, re-correcting the silhouette from the shadow. Making the inside even darker. Dark silhouette will make with more contrast. Putting tone inside of the eye. Making the tear duct lighter. emphasizing the contrast slightly more and at the same time applying the right middle tone. Here will be lighter. Emphasizing a little bit more the plane of the nose and the connection with the eye.
We show the cast shadow, I will emphasize the tone a bit more, and you can use your finger on the charcoal. Let's put the work on the tonal information on the shadow. The reflection is too strong, so let's put a bit of tone. The main focus on part of the light and the shadow, we need to show the connection between the depth of the drawing and show the larger part with more tone. We can see the shadow inside of the holes. And as you see, I'm working on the connection between the side plane and the center plane, because this plane is closer to us, so we need to make it more contrasting. And here we have a bit of the shadow. In here it will be softer, so let's detail it, but still continue to make it soft in respect to its proportions. The connection of the side plane and the eye socket will also be a bit softer because there is no light here. Let's see the center line very carefully and change the connection. We see the tip of the nose, and we reconstruct and rebuild the shape a little bit better. At the same time, we introduce the silhouette of the form a bit better. Here it will be round. After we have done this, let's see where the plane is here. And it will be this point. Which is 1, 2, 3. Inside here is 4. Come out here. Come out again here. Make it a little thicker here. You could again emphasize the plane with a softer pencil and the plane that will be the closest to us in here. This,
Here, one we will have one more and one more there. This plane could be even a little darker here. Let's take away the lines we don't need.
Making more obvious part of the shadow at the eyebrow bone. Ensuring that the form here is getting a little bit more middle of tone. One main rule is when the form is turning in the opposite direction from the light, it will always get darker. Here we need to show different planes of the frontal bone through the use of lines and tone. And after, we will come back to the cheekbone. We have a cube formed in this plane. This line will be the frontal, side, top plane. It is simplified as a cube, and we need to show this cube inside of the cheekbone. Making the silhouette more obvious at the cheekbone. Why? Because this bone is very close to us in perspective. The hole inside will be even darker. The darker part of the cast shadow. Showing the obvious plane of the cube and adding a little bit more tone to it. Right now, let's start to work a little bit more precisely on the upper part of the jaw. And we will make first of all the tonal solution. The planes have a smaller volume inside, which helps to understand the part where the teeth will start to grow. Inside of this one, we have the teeth.
making the general form with a round mass, and also not including individual teeth, but looking at the general form. The big mass of the teeth, which is frontal plane, side plane. From the right side, you can see I am separating these two planes using tone and separating from the middle line of the teeth. We have the light from the top, which means the thickness of the lower jaw will get a little bit lighter here. And the vertical plane of the lower jaw will be in middle of tone. We need to show this difference precisely, whilst at the same time figuring out part of the chin and silhouette. For the silhouette of the chin, we need to look at the bone that is closest to us and comes out. And we could make an even stronger accent on this bone. Plane of the bone. Again at this bone, we have separation from the side part and frontal part. We're close to the end of our work with the skull, and at the last stage, you need to look again precisely at the whole form together and see which part we will need to make darker. At the silhouette, we have a correction. We need to make this more precise. Looking for the accent inside of the form and making the form more characteristic. For example, here, as already mentioned, the teeth will come out. Middle line will be more obvious. We could make an accent here. As said before, I am not making each single tooth, I am just showing big planes. Teeth will go in the light and in the shadow. Making the corner of the chin more obvious. And the silhouette inside of the bones here on the upper part of the skull. Showing where the tone goes inside of this plane by adding middle of tone. Adding accent to the direction of the eye sockets here. The obvious silhouette of the form, again adding a small accent, just a little bit darker. When I am talking about accents, I mean making it a little bit darker. When form comes out, make it darker, accent on the chin. And we are done with our skull in profile. This is very important that at the top part of the skull, where we have the brain, that this is a really big form with all different planes, like we have already done, which is frontal, side, upper part, low part, you can see here. We have built this part and put it through and made an ellipse inside. It's how we started. Using our constructive line to imagine our skull if we were to see it transparently. And after we started work with the frontal part of the skull, At the frontal part, we have the cheekbone, the nose bone, lip part, lower jaw and upper jaw, ear hole. All of those elements we tried to figure out and find the correct silhouettes between them. At the same time, we added all of these details inside the big carcass of the form.
In this case, the zygomatic arch is very well outlined. That is why in all European academies, there is a tradition, after making the skeleton, after the depicting the skull, it is common to make a portrait, the head of an old man. After that, you can move on to depicting a younger person. This is because in young people, the important structural elements are hidden, including the zygomatic arch, hidden due to the development of the muscles I'm talking about now. The second very important muscle for the artist is the masseter muscle, which is located on top of the branch of the lower jaw in 2 layers. The deeper layer starts from the 2 posterior thirds of the zygomatic arch and attaches to the masseter tuberosity, which, I remind you, coincides with the angle of the lower jaw. The more superficial layer, which is of more interest to us, is slightly shifted forward. It starts from the lower edge of the zygomatic arch, the lower edge of the zygomatic bone, and even from the zygomatic process of the upper jaw. It heads to its attachment point. I remind you that this is a masseter tuberosity of the lower jaw. This means that it goes slightly backwards, not vertically, but diagonally. What I just depicted are the contours of the masseter muscle. In front, in the deep layer, the part of the muscle that is located deeper may protrude somewhat. As a rule, it is not very visible on a living body, but the outer layer of this muscle can be defined not only in its contours, not only in its volume, but when performing chewing movements, even the structure of this muscle can be visible. The masseter muscle works in sync with the temporalis muscle, but its action is slightly different. To make this clearer, let's draw an arrow that will show the direction of the pull of the muscle when it lifts the lower jaw. Here's that arrow. So, while the temporalis muscle pulls the lower jaw up and back, the masseter muscle pulls the lower jaw up and somewhat forward. You could say that while the temporalis muscle acts on the front teeth, your masseter muscle acts more on the molars. A very important thing for an artist. The fact is that both of these muscles do not just lie in the side surface of the head. Their borders are also the borders of a large head shape. When you draw a human head, be sure to define the boundaries of the surfaces that make up this large shape. And if we are talking about the front surface of the head, we need to know exactly what points it can be lined up. If we are talking about the lateral surface of the head, we usually define these boundaries along the edges or by the contours of the 2 masticatory muscles. Here they are. Anything outside of these counters cannot be considered the side of the head. You may have a question arise: what is the free space of the triangular shape between the zygomatic arch, the posterior edge of the masseter muscle, and the posterior edge of the mandible branch filled with? The thing is that this is where a very large gland is located. By its function, it is a salivary gland, but its location near the auricle is called the auricle gland. So, the auricle or preauricular gland, here it is.